Okay, so tonight, you guys have already been talking about missions in the sense of, I know Pastor Greg taught a powerful lesson on being ambassadors of reconciliation and who we are, right, all that. So what I'm going to carry through tonight is about world missions. And because I know that you're all in this class to be leaders and to lead other people, I want to talk tonight not just about world missions for you in terms of maybe, like Kyle said, you're trying to figure out what continent you're going to, but from the point of view is that you're leading and making disciples who also need to have that DNA for the nations. And so I hope that tonight will really empower you, with the people that are in your life, to help them as they understand God's call in their life for the nations. And that this is not just about being a missionary. This is about living a lifestyle with God's heart for the nations. So I'm hoping that tonight this will help you as leaders in helping other people with that. So when we talk about world missions, for just those words, world missions, it brings up different feelings for different people. Some people get really excited about it, or just stoked world missions. Other people, it terrifies them. It's like, oh God, I don't want to think about that. And other people may be just bored with it. They don't, not much thought about it. But whatever it is for you, what feelings you have, we can't get past the point that this is the call of God, is this call of the nations. So let's start by reading Acts 1:8. It says, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." And when we think of this, you've probably had someone explain this scripture to you before, but let's just start with this. So Jerusalem is your own culture, your own people, right? Taking the gospel just to people like you. When we talk about Judea and Samaria, those are people who are in your city, perhaps, but maybe different culture. They might speak, maybe it's like here, we have Europeans come who speak English, but they're a little different culture, Russians or something. But even a little bit different, speak a different language, but they're in our city and they're different than us, but we don't have to go far to find them, and even the connection is not that difficult. And then the ends of the earth, of course, is going to a place where it's a different culture, a different language, everything is different. So those are the levels we have engagement when we talk about missions. So if there was ever an urgency today, it's this: for us to disciple a generation that understands the following. Jesus Christ following Jesus means preaching the good news to all creation. So, because Mark 16 says, he said to them, "Go into the world and preach the gospel, the good news to all creation." And what we want to look at tonight is three parts of world missions when we talk about that, taking the gospel to all creation. So we're going to examine first, what is the current state of missions today? Like, where are we at? Like, how is it going? Are we actually accomplishing the goal when Jesus sent us out to preach the gospel to all nations? Are we getting anywhere? Are we losing? Like, where are we at? We're going to talk about who's going to do this? Like, who are the people that are going to complete the Great Commission? And finally, we're going to talk about how and some strategies. Is it possible to complete the Great Commission? Can it ever be done? Is this going to go on and on forever? Like, how can this ever be finished? And we're going to talk about that. But tonight, we'll start with the state of world evangelization. And you've probably looked ahead in the book and maybe you've seen the answers, but let's just do this quiz on page 2. Are mine the same pages as you? Is it? 121. Okay, it's page 2 on mine. So let's just do this right now. And if you've looked at the answers, but if you're part of the I team, you already know the answers. But anyway, first question: what is the Great Commission as stated in Matthew 28:19? Is that taking the gospel to every person, take the gospel to every country, make disciples in every ethnic group, disciple every person on the earth? Okay, this number is wrong. It should be number 2. Anyway. Approximately what percent of the world's population has virtually no exposure to the gospel? 50%, 40%, 30, or 20? What do you think? What is the fastest growing major religion in the world? Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, or evangelical Christianity? Approximately how many distinct people groups are there in the world? We'll talk about people groups more later. 25,000, 21,000, 17,000, 11,000. What do you think about that? Distinct people groups. Approximately how many of these groups are considered unreached? 8,300, 7,200, 5,200, or 1,200? I'm not going too fast, am I? You guys okay? You're tracking? Okay. What country has the most unreached people groups? Indonesia, China, India, or Pakistan? What do you think? Okay, most missionaries come from Western countries, non-Western countries. And here's a really good one. For every $1 spent on all Christian causes, what amount goes towards church planting among unreached peoples? So $1, 50 cents goes to unreached people groups, 30 cents, 5 cents, or 1 cent. And then what is the ratio of missionaries to unreached Muslims? 3,000 missionaries for every million Muslims, 300 for every million, 30 for every million, or 3 for every million. What do you think about that? Last question. Are you okay? You tracking? Last question. Who is considered the father of modern missions? Hudson Taylor, Jim Elliot, William Carey, or C.T. Studd? This is just to see how mission savvy you are. Let's see, little test. Everybody got the answers down? Need more time? Okay, let's answer them. Be honest, you guys, no cheating. Okay, the first one, what's the answer? What is the Great Commission? What is that? What is it? Just yell the answer out. D? It's C. Make disciples in every ethnic group. Not every person, but every ethnic group. Okay, number 2, what's the answer? What percent of the world's population? C, that's right. 30% has virtually no exposure to the gospel. No church, nobody. You could walk for 1,000 miles and not find a Christian. 30% of the world. What is the fastest growing major religion in the world? D. A lot of people want to say Islam, but when we talk about evangelical Christianity, we're not talking about nominal Christianity, we're just talking about like evangelical separate, and where Islam might be growing by birth, because you're born a Muslim, evangelical Christianity is growing through conversion, and it's especially in the Pentecostals, especially in South America, it's just growing like wildfire. So we're on the winning team, you guys. How many distinct people groups are there in the world? A? 17. Wow. 17 distinct. We're going to talk more about what that means, people groups. Okay. Approximately how many of these people groups are considered unreached? B. It says 7,200. I've been quoting 6,700. This was stats. I don't remember how many years ago I wrote this, but somewhere in the 7,000 area, okay? Unreached. That's not bad. We're going to hear more about how doable this is. What country has the most unreached people groups? You say China. Who else you say? C. Indonesia. Right in our midst. No, sorry, that's not true. It's India. India has 2,200 unreached people groups. 2,200. China has 428, and Pakistan has 447. So India is leading with the most distinct groups. That's linguistically, culturally, that's a lot to think about. You just can't go reach India. You have to think about all those distinct cultures who are not even, it's not like they eat different, like red curry and yellow curry. They're like quite different from each other. Okay. Most missionaries come from where? The non-Western world. Do you realize that? That non-Western world has overtaken Western missionaries. Like way overtaken. And us Western missionaries are being left in the dust behind other Africa and Asia and South America. That's really good news, actually. Okay, for every dollar spent on Christian causes, what amount goes towards church planting among unreached peoples? D. It's 1 cent. Isn't that like, whoa? Because, I mean, it's going to good things, but we'll talk more about this, that people are, by and large, aren't thinking of the unreached. They're going where things are already happened, where the action already is. And so lots of money is being poured into that, which keep pouring money into there, but to raise up more finances for the unreached. And you'll see by the end of tonight how desperately we need to do that. So 1 cent. Okay, ratio of missionaries to unreached Muslims. A?
3 for every million.
It's D. 3 for every million. So that means you 3 in the sofa here, you 3 have 1 million missionaries to reach all by yourself. It's go. That's it. It's you. 1 million Muslims. So that's the ratio. If you have 1 million, that's you might want some help, right? Okay, who is considered the father of modern missions? It's just my own amusement. C. William Carey, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. We'll mention him later on. Okay, did anybody get 100%? No? Nobody got 100%? I-team, hello. Jeff, Cynthia, hi, Winnie. Okay, anybody get? Anybody get 9 out of 10? 9. Okay, this is a good thing you're here tonight. You need to be here. 8 out of 10. Come on. 8. How about 7? 7. 6. 6. Whoa, tie. So 4 of you. Okay.
You cheated, but it's okay.
6 out of 10. That's good. That's really good. Okay, I only have 2 prizes. There's 4 of you. Let me think. How can I do this? Well, you guys can share. So you guys can have. Do any of you have this book, Back to Jerusalem, already? You already have it? So you don't need to share. You don't have it? There you go. And you can share it with them. And you guys at the back, feel free to share this book. That's a book about the vision in China to reach the nations. It's a sizzling book. So that'll inspire you. Okay. So what I want to do before we get into this, I want to talk about what we call, it says in your notes, the big picture. And why it's important to talk about the big picture in missions is because we all have some maybe some experience of missions or some ideas. Like maybe you went on a short-term mission trip once, and so you experienced something of missions. You helped out in a certain poor area, and you had some experiences, and it really touched your heart. But you could come back from that experience and think that now you understand missions because you were a missionary for 2 weeks and you understand what's going on in the whole big picture. Or maybe you've got a friend you're supporting in a mission field, and so you get their letters, and so you think, well, I'm pretty informed about missions. But I just want to say, like, missions is like, how can I say this? So you come into a house, a big house, and you're in one room of the house, and you see everything that's going on, the furnishings and what's going on, the activities there. But if you don't leave that one room, the rest of the entire house could be all kinds of things going on. It could be on fire. There could be people locked in the basement. Like, you don't have the big picture in that house, and so you're doing what you do in that one room, which is great. But as people who follow Jesus, I think it's really important that, and as leaders who are leading a generation, that we understand the bigger picture. Because if you don't have that big picture, all the decisions you make for missions, but even for your own life, you're missing information. So you might think that things are going fine out there and you're not needed. You might think that, the world's being reached, or you might think that, you could think all kinds of things and make your decisions, even your life decisions, where you go and what you do with your life, based on that piece of information you know. But if you knew the bigger picture, it could drastically change not only how you engage in missions, but how the future of your life, the direction of your life, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I want to start with this big picture. It's super important. I've got in here, it's like, maybe it's not in your notes. It's like seeing one thread in a tapestry and not seeing the whole tapestry. You know what tapestry is? Tapestry is like, this is tapestry. Sorry, I'll give it back to you. So this fabric has got all these threads, and so you can see one thread, but if you don't see the whole picture, there's one beige thread, you don't see the whole picture, right? So that's what it's like. You have to see the big picture, not just the one thread of the tapestry. Okay, so based on that one thread, you will most likely be wrong about the whole picture. You need to step back and see the rest of the threads to get an accurate picture. Even when you read the Bible, I don't know, when I first became a Christian, about you guys, but I read the Bible and it was all about me. So I'm open the Bible, like, what is God speaking to me, which is great. But the Bible isn't really about my story, it's about God's story. And even reading the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, the Bible has actually got one theme, and that's God's heart and involvement with people of all nations, and his heart to bring everyone under his reign into relationship with him and to worship him. And if we read the Bible about me, just my promise for the day, we miss like what God is doing in the world. And it's an invitation to come and be part of his story, not inviting him into our story. Does that make sense? Because I did that a lot. So I have a quote here from John Piper. Missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exist because worship doesn't. When this age is over and the countless millions of the redeemed on their faces before the throne of God, missions will be no more. It is a temporary necessity, but worship abides forever. And I would even add that it's the goal of missions isn't just worship, it's love. It's bringing people into a place where they can receive and give God's love. That's the goal of missions. Okay, I want to give you some definitions and some words here. We're going to look at, so Matthew 28:19. I think most of you probably know when we talk about missions, that's kind of the key verse. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, right? Pretty much you know that. We call that the Great Commission. I think everybody knows that. So let's look at that, the Great Commission. So in it, go therefore make disciples of all nations. Let's define the word nations as ethne. Ethne refers to distinct ethnic groups. And just if you're not tracking with me, because English is your second language, please stop me, okay? So ethne is not even an English word, but ethnic groups, or we call these people groups. And so I said again, for example, the nation of India, it's one geopolitical nation, but there's 2,200 distinct ethnic groups in it. That's important information for you. I'm going to go reach India. Like, what does that mean, reach India? Like, what are you going to reach in India? Like, Indians. Like, well, there's 2,200 different groups. And so taking the gospel to one group, even though the gospel is the same gospel, might have a different presentation to a different group. And if you don't know that, and you just kind of go and do whatever you think, you might encounter some walls and obstacles because you haven't understood that particular distinct group. You think, wow, that's a lot of work. How are we going to learn all that? Well, that's why God is raising up and has raised up a humongous mission force so that we can penetrate each of those people groups because God loves them each, right? So we need to understand, we talk nations, we're not talking geopolitical, we're talking people groups. And how do we make disciples of all people groups? Where do you start? So I go into one of those ethnic groups in India. How do I disciple them? And what we do is we give each people group their own church. If there is a church, a thriving, multiplying, indigenous, means local church, in each of those people groups that's multiplying itself, then that is how the gospel goes viral or spreads through that people group. So if each people group can be established, we establish a church, then it will spread through each group. Does that make sense? So it's not that we have to reach every single person in each group, but we establish what we call beachheads, churches we'll call them, in each group. Does that make sense? Okay. And then, so each group has a church, and then a people group is considered reached when it has multiplying churches in that group. So again, it's not reaching every single individual, but if, say, missionaries go in where there's no church and the church is established, the missionaries pull out, and then those local people continue to multiply churches and bring the gospel into that people group, then the people group becomes reached. So, and how do you measure? I mean, how do you measure what's reached? How reached is reach, right? So typically people who do missions would say if a particular people group is like 5% Christian, that would be reached, because 5% of the population would be enough to continue, if they would be obedient, to reach the rest of their people group. So if you think about nations around the world and think about the percentage of Christians, I mean, there's no magic number, right? I mean, Jesus decides what's reached. In the end, he'll say it's finished. But just typically, we know that if a people group has about 5% reached, it can continue on and reach the rest of its people. Unreached means they have less than 5% Christian. So like, for instance, Thailand has 1.1% Christian. We would say Thailand is not reached. Japan, 1.5%. We would say Japan's not reached. Did you know does that seem a lot or not a lot? 1.5% of people in Japan.
It's not a lot.
That's not a lot, yeah. Are you surprised by the numbers? It seem higher or low than you think? Seems low? Well, that was stat last year. Maybe it's 2% now, but last year, 1.5. So you can see, like, we want to keep bringing the gospel to Japan and Thailand. It helps us. Like, this is a big picture. You think, I'm going to be a missionary. Where should I go? Well, if you pick a nation that's like 35% Christian, then maybe you're not as desperately needed there. And maybe they're doing fine without you. Not that you shouldn't go there, but just it helps you to consider how to be strategic and where the gospel is not. So where the gospel has reached and where it hasn't reached. Making sense? Yeah. This is very strategic to think this way and understand. And I think it's the love of the Father that we understand the state of his sons and daughters and where they're at. And those are their farthest away and those that are closer. this is quite critical to think in people groups. So I think there's a big difference between, for missions, trying to go in and fix problems in a struggling nation and going in to disciple that nation. So people think of missions, okay, there's an earthquake somewhere. So missions means going and helping. Yes, that's part of it. Yes. But if we always think that missions is going and fixing problems, digging wells, only, I'm going to say right at the beginning, there's nothing wrong. Did I say something wrong? I'll probably offend somebody before the night's over. But if we think it's only that, and that's all, we don't talk about discipling the nation, which is what the Great Commission is about, we're missing something. So I'm going to talk more about doing both, but I just want you to understand that if we're going to do what Jesus said, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, then we have to think in terms of not just fixing their problems, but actually helping them become disciples of Jesus. Are you guys okay with that? Okay. I'm sure I'm going to offend people before the night's over. But anyway, yeah. So how are we doing in this, by the way? Let's go on to that now. I'm going to give you a progress report. So you got here, world population 7.13 billion. I just checked the world population counter thing today. It's now 7.2, almost 7.3 today. So it's going up. You should go to that. It's going really fast. Total number of people groups in the world, 16,789 I've got there. You know, that's okay. Number of unreached, I've got 72. I've been saying 6,700. It depends on how you measure a people group, like how the affinity with another group, are they that separate, or are they that unique, whatever. But just keep that in mind. That's unreached, somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 that are left to reach. Now think about that. Okay, so of say 17,000, we've got 7,000 to go. Like that means that 10,000 people groups in the world are reached. Like let that settle on you. That's like, we're not fighting a losing battle here, you guys. Like, Jesus, like, isn't asleep, at the wheel, and the world is going to hell. I mean, yes, it is, but no, it's not. There's actually, God is in control, and people are coming to him. And so there are a lot of reach people groups. And not saying that everybody in that people group is reached, but it means there's moves of God, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But just the good news is we are going forward, not backwards. Okay? That should be really good news for you. Number of totally unengaged people groups in the world. Okay, this is 639. Of course, I put these numbers last year. I'm not sure what number it is, but unengaged means, so missionaries are thinking all the time. There's a huge mission force out there, missions people, fanatics like Glenn and I, and we think about these people groups all the time. We target them, and our churches target the Uyghurs, so we're thinking about unreached people groups and getting people into those places. But there are at least 600 that no one has targeted, maybe not a lot of prayer going on for, no one's planning on getting in there. So that sounds really terrible. But the good news is, doesn't that sound doable? And you know what? We know who they are. We have names for them all. All the stuff I'm talking about, this is not nebulous, abstract stuff. There are lists. People have surveyed and studied. And so, never before in history have we seen so clearly where we have to go, the task that remains. And so those ones that aren't targeted, unengaged, we can pray for them, and we can think about that. And it's not like, wow, this is just impossible. This is doable in our generation if we would do it. So, 3, okay. Trying to do this without my glasses. This is really fun. Okay. So, can you get an idea of how critical it is to have this understanding of the big picture then? And how, as you're discipling people and calling them into following Jesus and understanding that as they get their own life, lordship in their life, and understand how to have a relationship with God and be in love with Jesus, and how to make disciples themselves, and to see where their life could go, and that as you are raising up leaders, you're also raising up a generation that could complete the Great Commission in this generation. That's part of what you're doing as leaders, and having that understanding, that big picture. And so you can put that DNA into your disciples of having that passion for what God is doing. Yeah. So by percentage, let's look at the world then, where we stand. Okay. So I've got here visualize a pie, but I'll give you an even better picture. Okay, let's say there's 10 people in this, there's more than 10 people, but let's say in this room, one person, Dorothy, is a true believer. She loves Jesus, she follows Jesus, and Jesus is Lord of her life. And whatever Jesus says, she'll do. She obeys Jesus. Okay, but then in the back, we have Nabil and Joshua, and we call them nominal believers, those two. That means they know about Jesus, and they believe in God, but they do whatever they want. Really, they're in charge of their lives. Yes, and happy. I believe in Jesus, whatever, but I'm a nominal Christian, means I might go to church, but I don't really follow Jesus, I follow myself, okay? So 1 follows, 2 are nominal, and then we've got 4 let's see, you 4 here. Cynthia, Michelle, Maan, and that's a lot of Filipinos in one Hong Kong. Okay, and Mel. Okay, you've heard the gospel at least once. You've heard the gospel. It's like someone has actually preached the gospel to you, but you said, not so interested. Not interested. So 4 of you. This is what the whole world has looked like. The last picture, we take 3 people, you 3 on the sofa here. You have never, ever heard even the name Jesus. No idea. You don't know who Jesus is. You have no idea. There's hope. There's love. Clueless about that. You may be a different religion. You may be an atheist, but you've never heard of Jesus. That's what the world looks like. So 1 out of 10 people, Dorothy, love Jesus, will obey Jesus. You've got the nominal. You've got those who've heard, and you've got those who have never heard. So that's kind of in a nutshell the world. So just think about that. And okay. Now, where are those people, especially these 3, located? The majority of unreached people groups, they're located in a place called the 1040 window. If you've been around me long enough, you hear about the 1040 window all the time. 1040 window. Just put up your hand if you know what the 1040 window is. So I'm preaching to. Okay, so 1040 window. If you look at a map of the world, look at North Africa and across Middle East, Central Asia, right over to Far East, and think of the equator, 10 degrees above the equator to up to 40 degrees above the equator. That's sort of the rectangle right across North Africa, Middle East. Okay, picture that. That part of the world is where the least evangelized people live, and I think it's 98%, something like that. Of all the most unreached people, like these guys here, they are in the 1040 window. And we just use the word 1040 window just to kind of, not that the rest of the world doesn't have unreached people, but this is the majority are in the 1040 window. And so when we plan on mission strategies and where we should send people and where we should go, it's not that we can't go anywhere else, because actually Europe needs to be re-evangelized. It's bad news. But this part of the world is super, super unevangelized. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. But that's the 1040 window, so 10 to 40. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, so let me just show you what that looks like here. Usually I give these out. I forgot to put in the reminder. So you can see in the world the red, okay? The green is where the gospel, we would call those reached areas. Now, you can see Canada. Canada's green. You can, we're not reached. But we have a higher percentage than 5% reached people, percentage-wise, in our country, right? So we would say reached. If every Christian in Canada would obey, we could reach Canada, right? So we're reached. But the red, that's basically the 1040 window. Right? That's the least reached area. That's just kind of a visual. And it's encouraging to see how much green there is. And what's super encouraging, can you look at this green right here? This is China. So China is ruining the 1040 window because it used to be red and now it's kind of big chunk out of the nice, neat rectangle, because China is so becoming reached, like super reached. It's yeah, we'll talk more about that later, but isn't that encouraging? So this is a big picture. It's kind of like, not that we shouldn't send missionaries still to South Africa or down there, or to South America. I mean, there's tons to do, right? But if you want to think about what's sort of the task that's the most remaining tasks, we think of that. Okay, does that help you a little bit? Okay, I should have got these maps for you. Anyway, okay, let me give you some more good news, because that was good news about China, and it's good news to see that red where it is and how much green there is. It's in your binder here. Almost every day, 175,000 people become followers of Jesus. It's like, wrap your mind around that every day, okay? Every week, 3,500 new churches are planted. Bible translations. The New Testament has been translated for 82% of the world's population. God bless those groups like Wycliffe and IBT that go out there and slave over, language and translate Bibles into the languages of local people. I mean, you probably don't even think about them, or maybe you don't even know them, but there's an army of people who go out there and translate God's word into language after language after language. Jesus film. You know what the Jesus film is? Most of you know that? Yeah. Okay. There have been 6.5 billion viewings of this film. Okay, that was last year. 6.5 billion viewings. Christian radio broadcasting is now reaching 91% of the world's population. So even if you're in a very unreached area where it's restricted by the government, they can't always keep out those radio, I don't know, what do you call it? Not radio beams? Frequency, I don't know. Waves. Can't stop them coming in. And evangelical Christianity is growing 2 times faster than Islam and 3 times faster than Buddhism and Hinduism. Cool, eh? Evangelical Christianity has grown by more than 300 million believers in the past 10 years. Now listen to this. 10 million in North America and Europe, 250 million in developing countries such as Nigeria, Brazil, India, and China. In 1948, there were 1 million Christians in China. Today, there are over 130 million. That's not true. A low number now would be 160 million. I've heard as many as 260 million in China. So that's really good. 30,000 Chinese become Christians every day. Super cool. And yeah, 1 million Muslims turn from Islam to Jesus every year. Not every day, every year. I'll talk about that more. There's just some crazy things in the last 5 years in the Muslim world. Both the church and the missionary force are growing much faster in the non-Western world than in the Western world. So, churches in China, the Philippines, Brazil, Korea, and many others in the non-Western world are sending hundreds of thousands of missionaries. These nations are no longer a mission field. They have become an unstoppable missions force. This is so encouraging. Top countries, this is really interesting. Top countries where Christianity has the highest percentage growth rate, not numbers, but growth rate: Nepal, China, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Okay, here's a quote. For the first time in history, the total evangelization of this planet is more than a pipe dream. Pipe dream means it's such a big, far out dream. It's like, okay, more than that. True, the population is larger than ever. The opposition is stronger than ever. Yet the resources to finish the job are greater than ever. And we are on the winning team. I can't take time on this right now, but Glenn and I, we just have volumes of books and reports come in. Like books are just published, a couple months ago, just reporting. How can I say, like shocking stories of what God is doing, especially in the Muslim world. Story after story of where the gospel is spreading, like I talk about going viral. And they're coming in, these reports are coming all the time. And, of course, you're not going to read about them in the paper or see them on, the news. But this is what's happening currently in our world. And it's very encouraging. It's the invisible story of God, the kingdom progressing through the world. And in the last 5 years, it's just been explosive. Super encouraging. But we still have some challenges, and let's talk about the challenges. Why hasn't the Great Commission been completed then? All this stuff is going on. Here's our challenges. The spiritual challenge. Satan does not give up ground without a battle. So there are more Christians martyred in the 20th century than in the previous 19 centuries combined. I mean, you don't realize it. Think, it's all cool out there. Of course, we have ISIS, so we're hearing some things, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Like what's going on right now in terms of martyrdom, it's huge. Persecution. Population challenge. There's 5.5 billion lost people in the world. That's a bit of a challenge. People group challenge. The remaining people groups are the most difficult to penetrate because of geographic barriers, like they're in remote areas, harsh climates, linguistic barriers, illiteracy, no Bible in their language, unwritten languages. So how do you take the Bible, God's word, to a people group that is illiterate? They don't have a written language. Things like that. Cultural barriers. Political and national challenge. The countries with the highest percentage of unreached peoples tend to be the most closed towards Christianity. For example, North Korea. It's the most severe repression of Christians is happening. You probably know North Korea. So just to even possess a Bible in North Korea, or to say God or Jesus, could mean that you will be punished with death or go to prison. There's probably more than 100,000 Christians in labor camps in North Korea. So that's a challenge for us. Now, there are some things going on there, but just these are the challenges. And so here's a way you can picture this. Maybe it'll help you just to wrap this session up. So a large ship is at sea and it sinks. And immediately rescue boats go out to rescue the people in the water, okay? Picture that. And so they go to an area where there's lots of people and they're saving the people. Meanwhile, there's a whole other area that has other drowning passengers, but not a single boat is going there. The boats are kind of going where the action is, getting people in, drying them off, making sure they're okay, and taking care of those people. And there's still people drowning, and not a single boat is going there. So it's not that we should stop caring about the people that are already in the boats, because there may be hypothermia or whatever thing's going on, right? Care for them. But we should launch a whole bunch more boats to go where there are no boats for the people that are drowning. And that would be kind of like the way our mission situation is today. We need to deploy more boats to those passengers, drowning people who have no boats there to save them. Right? Does that make sense? As a picture. So keep on sending, but take care of the people, but we're missing a whole bunch of people that are going to drown. So I already mentioned these statistics. For every 1 million Muslims, there's only 3 missionaries. That's not a good ratio. Just think if you're trying to reach 1 million Muslims with just 2 of your friends, you'd want some help. So we could improve that. And then this imbalance of mission finances, every dollar, only 1 cent goes to the unreached. So now you can picture, have we talked about this? So the rest of that dollar is mostly going to areas not, the 1 cent is going to the red. It's just, why? It's hard, right? So it's easier to go maybe where there's already something going on and we can just keep on helping and sending teams and doing things. And like, how do you start? How do you pioneer there? So money is going to go where things, and there's always things that are happening, right? There's no shortage of need, and it's legitimate and important and desperate too. But somehow we have to get, not saying to stop putting money into the green areas, but we need to, raise up more than 1 cent to go to this area. Does that make sense? I want to ruin you tonight, that you will think differently and your disciples will see the need and the desperation to think in terms of the unreached. Okay. So when you're thinking of doing missions and you have a heart, you have a passion, you really want to go and follow Jesus and do some things, I'm just encouraging you to do your homework and think about the big picture. So, for instance, I'll give some examples of doing things that maybe without doing your homework you could do that you think are good, but you don't. Someone decides to go, I'll just pick Africa, because, go and dig a well in Africa to help a village who doesn't have, they have to walk a long ways to get the water. But you didn't do your homework, and perhaps when you went and did that well, you didn't do your homework, and maybe those people in that village actually walking to where they got their water. No, you didn't dig a well, you put in pipes, okay? Going to the well was part of their community. That was part of life for them. Not to say that they shouldn't have clean water, but when you didn't do your research and you went and did that, you just destroyed the community, the fabric of their society. Maybe there was a way to do that without doing that, but you didn't think, because you're just coming in, especially Westerners, come in and want to solve your problems and fix things. Or, I've heard of people going to Africa and building houses or schools or something, and it costs like a fortune for everybody to travel there for 3 weeks to do that. And they go like, wouldn't it have been better if you, and I've actually heard this, use that money to employ us so that we could be employed, because we can build too. And we could have built 10 schools for the 1 school you guys built with the cost to come here. We're just good intentions, right? But not thinking through. Or even here, so we go downtown. The biggest thing here at churches, we want to go downtown East Side where it's poor, and we want to, it's Christmas, I'm going to give up my Christmas, I'm going to make sandwiches and go down and feed the poor. That sounds really good, but if you think about it, first of all, you're going to find this out because you're going to go down in the streets, you're going to actually find this out. At any given time, there's at least 12 locations downtown, at least, where you can get free food if you live downtown. There is food. People there aren't starving for food, they're starving for relationship. Are you willing to invest relationally, rather than just sort of parachute in, drop in, do your sandwiches, and go back to your nice house? And that was good. I did, I feel so good. I fed the poor. But you didn't build relationship with them. That's what they're starved for. And that's costly, though. Build relationships with those people? I don't even know where to start. But if we don't think that way, if we just think about doing good, because that's what we're designed to do that, but not understanding the big picture, we could just keep feeding the poor. So my friend, this Saturday, they were doing that. They were feeding the poor. And she said, at least 5 of them came and they didn't eat any of the food they provided because they were full. They had just eaten somewhere else. And here this church is giving all this food and people have already eaten. So it's not just feeding them, it's building relations. And I don't know who wants to pay the price to build relations. That's very costly. That's a big cost compared to giving up Christmas Day and bringing soup and sandwiches. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to offend anybody, but just to think of it, I'm not saying you shouldn't bring soup downtown, but I'm just saying, think about that, and would you bring soup and be willing to invest relationally long-term, not just drop in and go out, back out again? Because that's a lot of missions is like that. People just go for 2 weeks somewhere, build a house and go out, and it's like, take some pictures, meet the poor child, and we call that missionary tourism, where we want to go and see the poor, and then, they're so happy and they have nothing. I come back, I'm going to appreciate what I have. And I just encouraging you to think strategically of the big picture, and is that really helpful, or is it helping us, or is it helping them? And yeah. So, are you guys tracking with me? Okay. Yes. The other issue I want to end with, in terms of missions, and just why maybe we're not getting the Great Commission finished, is that often we think in terms of missions about our own preferences. So maybe, I have people who say, since I was 5 years old, I felt God calling me to Africa. It's always Africa when you hear, it's Africa. Never did. Well, sometimes China. I just love Africa. I feel God calling me to Africa. And that's what they feel they should do, is because that's their preference, is Africa or Australia or whatever, whatever it is. And I just want to say that missions is not about our personal preferences, because missions never is about us. So you want to go because you're interested. I mean, it's good that you're interested. Maybe that's a desire from God or whatever. But if you're soldiers in an army and the general, there's a war, the soldier doesn't get to decide, hey, I think I'd like to go fight over there. Like, you're part of an army and you go where the battle is and where it's needed, and it's not every soldier has their personal preference. Oh, I think I'm called to Hawaii. I think I'm called, it's like hearing together where the army needs to go. And the problem often is something we call individualism, which means in our society, people their lives are governed by what's like me, like not in terms of biblical community or doing things, community. It's just, I'll just do whatever I want, whatever I feel inclined to do. And people go out and do missions with good intentions, and they're out there doing their own thing. And Glenn and I have been doing missions for, 35, 40 years. There's a lot of destructive things happen when people go out and do their own thing with good intentions. They're just out there because, I feel called to do this. And instead of doing this in the context of their church and other churches and teams, and so your personal preference, can I just say, isn't really on the table, maybe? It's like what is needed to be done. So you feel called to, I don't know what. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but can I just call us in, and your people you're discipling, to be discipled in the context of community and going with the community and working in the context of community, rather than, I don't want to use the term Lone Rangers, because you don't all know that term, Lone Rangers. A Lone Ranger is somebody who just does his own thing. It's a TV show, so to explain. Like someone who's a hero by himself versus being part of a community. I don't think anybody in this room knows what Lone Ranger is, right? Probably Peter's the only one. Do you know? Yeah. You know. Because I think I've taught. Okay, anyway, no Lone Rangers, whatever that means. Sorry. I'm very aware of this.
Solo efforts.
Solo efforts, yes. Okay. So if you get anything out of this lesson, the Great Commission will be completed. One day God will say, it is finished. This is, okay. Jesus did not give his church a vague, impossible command. The assignment he gave us is designed to be completed. Isn't that great? We are not to aimlessly try to fix a broken world. On and on and on. Band-aids, Band-aids. When is this ever going to end? How do we know we're finished? We're called to disciple all ethne, giving each people group the opportunity to encounter freedom through Jesus Christ and to experience God's love. So if you don't understand that, you could view world missions as something that's just so immense, and where do you start? And it never ends, because there's always poor and there's always war, and this is impossible. And you could feel overwhelmed. You could feel guilty because you don't know what little bit you can do. Or you can believe that God is redeeming all the peoples of the earth, just as he said he would. and that he has given his church everything we need to finish this assignment. Like, he's not freaking out about, oh, the church, I don't know what they're, like, he's given us all we need. And we are winning. And here is 2 verses that apply to this, Matthew 24. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world. It will be preached, okay? That's as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. An end will come. The gospel will be preached in all the nations. This is a question of what generation, and are we going to do it, or is another generation going to do it? And here's the end of the book. You know, when you read the end of the book, Revelation 7:9, this is what we know for sure. And after this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, every ethne, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb. That is how it's going to end up. That's where we're going to go.